Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. This is B.Shree Shwetha, Assistant Professor from the Department of Architecture, Veda Vyasa College of Architecture. I'll be giving a brief insight into Indian temple architecture. Temples, Alayam, Koil, Ambalam. These are structures that we see widely spread across our country and plays an integral role in all aspects of our culture and heritage. These temples emerged only after the Vedic period. Until then, the people worshipped the nature, that is the sun, moon, rain, water, and trees. Around the 1st century CE, a new type of worship evolved from the Sanatana Dharma, now which is known as Hinduism. Deities like Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Krishna, Devi became central figures of Hinduism. Buildings were constructed which could be a place of worship, whereas the Buddhist and Jaina structures were a place for enlightenment and teachings for the monks. India is known to be the land of temples. From grand ornate edifices to simple austere shrines, these symbols of faith can be seen in almost every corner of the country today. But temples as an architectural establishments have undergone a great deal of evolution over the years. Before the magnificent stone structures came up, temples were built of perishable materials like wood and timber. They were also constructed using bricks or were cut out of rocks. While there are remnants of a few structures believed to be temples from as early as the 3rd and 2nd century BCE, it was until the 3rd century CE in the Gupta age that the temple building tradition gained prominence in India. Buddhist religious architecture developed in the Indian subcontinent in the 3rd century BCE. There are mainly 3 types of structures that are typically associated with the religious architecture of early Buddhism. The first is a stupa, which is a dome-shaped monument used to house the relics associated to Buddha. And the second is chaityas, that is prayer halls, and viharas are monasteries. Barabar, Ajanta, Ellora are few examples that portray Buddhist architecture. Hindus and Jainas started to imitate them mainly at Badami, Aihole, Ellora, Elephanta, Aurangabad and Mamallapuram. From very early times, the construction of temples, palaces, rest houses, and other civil construction was undertaken by professional architects known as Tapati. Vastu Shastra was formulated by our ancestors ages ago as a Vedic science of layout and planning of buildings, and it has evolved over centuries. We have a number of Vedic texts like the Manasara, Mayamatam, and the Kautilya's Arthashastra, etc. From 600 AD to 1600 AD, we witnessed a phenomenal growth in temple architecture. The southern type of architecture underwent a long evolution in its details. It can most conveniently be divided into periods which coincide with the ruling dynasties in South India. The first in the series of southern or Dravidian architecture was initiated by the Pallavas. The rock cut temples, the Ratha type, and the structural temples like those at the Shore temple, and the Kailashanatha temple and Vaikunta Perumal temple in Kanchipuram. Dravidian architecture reached its pinnacle during the Chola period. The Brihatishwar temple, the Gangaikonda Cholapuram are one of the many examples. The later Pandyas who succeeded the Cholas by introducing elaborate ornamentation and huge sculptural images, many pillared halls, annexes and gopurams, setting a pattern which the Vijayanagaras followed. The Pallava dynasty. Their coming marks as an important epoch in the history of South Indian architecture. The Pallava dynasty existed between the 3rd and 9th century CE, ruling a portion of what is today Andhra Pradesh. Pallava architecture shows the transition from the rock-cut temples to the stone-built temples. The earliest examples of the Pallava art are the rock-cut temples of the 7th century AD, while the later examples are of structural temples built in the 8th and 9th centuries. The lasting monolithic temples known as rathas and mandapas provide superb skill of sculptures of Pallava period. The monolithic temples, example the five rathas, gave way to structural temples like the Shore temple in Mamalapuram. The first rocket architecture of Mahendravarman I of the Pallava dynasty was the Lakshitayatana Trimurti cave temple at Mandagapattu. It was hewn out of granite. There is an inscription in this cave temple that suggests it is made without brick, timber, metal, and mortar. It was commissioned by the king Vichitrachitta for the lords Brahma, Ishvara, and Vishnu. There are a number of constituents that go into planning of a temple, right from the selection of the site to the rituals that take place in the premises. The temples have gone through a great deal of development over the centuries. Initially, a temple consisted only of the Garbhagriha, a Prakara, and a Mandapa. Later on, there were a number of additions like the Arthamandapa, Mahamandapa, Nityamandapa, Unjal Mandapa, and a number of various other shrines for other deities. The most important part of a Hindu temple is the Garbhagriha, that is the womb chamber, which is a small shrine room located at the very heart of the temple. Within, a symbol or representation of a specific god is placed. The temple structure can be compared with a human body. Garbhagriham, that is the main sanctum, is equated with the human head. Antarala, that is the vestibule, is equated with the human neck. Arthamandapam, that is the half hall, is compared with the human chest. The Mahamandapa, the main hall, is equated with the stomach. The flag post is viewed along with the human male organ, and the Gopuram or the temple gateway tower is viewed along with the human feet. Similarly, the Vimana elevation is compared to the seated Shiva. Gopura. It is the entrance gateway to a Hindu temple enclosure. Relatively small at first, the Gopuras grew in size from the mid 12th century until the colossal gateways came to dominate the temple complex, quite surpassing the main sanctum in both size and architectural elaboration. Often, a series of Gopuras are to be found at a shrine, each providing entry through a new enclosure wall.